So hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Inspiring Kids in STEM. I'm your host, Nishanian, founder of We STEM the Future. Our mission is to inspire the next generation of innovators by showcasing the limitless possibilities of STEM and empowering students to shape a brighter and more sustainable future. Today, we have the incredible honor of speaking with a distinguished leader in the field of economics, Dr. Charles Becker. As a research professor of economics at Duke University, Dr. Becker has significantly shaped our understanding of labor economics, public policy, and how economics intersects with societal issues. His impressive work has helped countless students and researchers unlock the power of economics to tackle real-world challenges. In addition to his groundbreaking research, Dr. Becker plays a pivotal role in the Director of PhD placement for Duke's Master Program, guiding the next generation of economists as they embark their professional journeys. His innovative and teaching methods, combined with his passion for education, make complex economic concepts accessible, inspiring students to dive deeper into the world of economics, curiosity, and enthusiasm. We are so excited to have Dr. Becker with us today to share his journey, wisdom, and insights on how STEM and economics come together to address today's global issues. Welcome, Dr. Becker, and we're thrilled to have you here today.
Well, thank you so much, Anya. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much too. So to kick things off, Dr. Becker, your extensive work in economics encompasses various domains. Could you share what initially inspired you to embark on this career path and how your journey has evolved throughout the years?
Well, it was the easiest option I had. I really didn't know. I would say that I was lucky rather than smart. I went to graduate school not knowing really what I was getting into. And when people say, when did you know you wanted to get a PhD? And my answer is about my third year of graduate school. Not at the beginning, but eventually I found that was kind of fun. And you can ask all kinds of questions. You're independent. You get to work with a lot of people. You're around really smart people, which is always great. And you can jump from interesting topic to interesting topic. So it worked out well. It worked out well because I like the environment. I've also had the chance to work overseas on advising projects and get to have the chance to implement some of the models and topics, and that's been a real joy.
Yeah, it's fascinating to hear about your personal journey and how it shaped your passion for economics. Speaking of which, economics and STEM may seem like different worlds to many people, but they clearly intersect in many different ways. So how do you see economics playing a role in addressing today's biggest global challenges, especially through a STEM lens? And are there any exciting examples from your research that showcase this?
Well, economics is now really a STEM field. You actually need more mathematics than I have. But the kind of research, the kind of topics we look at almost all involve significant amounts of either mathematics, game theory, computer science, statistics. So it's almost impossible not to engage with at least one of those. And that's certainly been true for me. Just because it came through today, I've been working with a PhD candidate from Tajikistan, and the project that we're working on now is what is the impact of improvement in electricity on educational outcomes in a fairly low income country. And to do that, we were able to, thanks to the generosity of the United States Air Force and NASA, you have high resolution satellite nightlight data for all of Tajikistan from 1992 onward, broken down essentially at the village level. And the hard part is mapping different satellites together. But then we can look and see when a hydro plant comes on, and then we look and see, okay, does that have an impact? What's the impact down the road on school attendance? Turns out that It does affect school attendance strongly. There's a lot of statistics you have to go through to get this, but it has an especially large impact for young girls.
Hearing about these interactions really highlights the importance of having the right skill set. In fact, STEM continues to evolve, and it's becoming more essential across all fields, including economics. So what specific STEM skills do you believe students should focus on developing to prepare for successful careers in economics and related fields? And how can young learners start cultivating these skills today?
Well, there's so many different areas you can't, you'd be my age before you acquired them all, at which point you'd be outdated. So you have to think about what it is you find really exciting. I think getting good skills in coding, in data use, for if you do empirical work, work with data is really important. Learning how to use, not being afraid of data sets, learning how to identify them, learning how to use things such as geographic information systems, learning how to play with things such as satellite data, learning basic statistical analysis, super, super important. What you don't want to do, when I first went overseas as an advisor, I remember thinking, this was long before you were born, about 1998, I went over to Kyrgyzstan, Central Asia, thinking, I'm going to help these folks. I'm going to figure out what their problem is, tell them how to fix it, and they will implement it, and the world will be a better place. And after about 4 days, I thought to myself, okay, I've revised my goals. My first goal is to do no harm, not make things worse off, because it was so complex. So I had to learn about what where they were coming from, what the problems really were, and I hired an interpreter. And I remember telling him, said, well, I actually can speak Russian, so I don't need you to translate the word for word. What I need you to do is sit in the rooms of meetings and tell me what they're actually saying. So you have to pick up, you have to gain both cultural knowledge and you have to gain all these technical skills.
Yeah, you've clearly emphasized the importance to cultivate these skills early on. Now, with your experience as a mentor, you must have great insights on what motivates students. So what strategies do you use to get students excited about STEM or concepts in economics? And how do you effectively integrate these concepts into your teaching to make it both fun and powerful?
Well, there's so many things that you can do. I mean, technology is changing so fast that today incoming undergraduate, college students can do things that professors can't do. The gap between what undergraduate students, and I bet this continues on down to high school and even junior high school, but the gap, the distance between what 13, 15-year-olds can do and what 28-year-old PhD students can do is enormously compressed. So we look to our students to teach us, help work with us and teach us, because techniques keep being bombarded. It's like, space particles coming in like little meteorites, and you all are faster at catching them. But we have, older folks have the experience of knowing where data sets are, what's been done in the past, where techniques are, how these things can be applied, and being excited about contributing to advancing knowledge. The world is a complex place, and coming up with simple answers usually doesn't usually work. There's rarely a really simple answer, but understanding trying to advance science by learning about problems and rejecting, bad hypotheses and supporting more plausible ones. That's what we do. The fact that young people, can actually make scientific contributions is just staggering. In my era, that would have been completely impossible unless you were a pure mathematician, which I'm not. Today, it is possible. And I have armies of students out there doing amazing things that I could not have begun to imagine even 10 years ago, much less 30 or 40.
That's a very creative approach to teaching. It reminds me of the power of interdisciplinary collaboration. Once STEM subjects blend with economics, incredible things can happen. STEM is all about breaking down concepts and working across disciplines. Can you share a project or collaboration that highlighted the benefits of combining economics with other STEM fields, and how can students embrace this kind of interdisciplinary action and approach into their own education?
Well, I can think of several, but I'll tell you about one that's both sad and important. You possibly but probably don't. In 1945, the United States successfully tested and dropped atomic bombs, hydrogen, plutonium bombs on Japan, and was atomic plutonium. And Soviet Union followed that, quickly tried to gain the technology, which they acquired, and tested it in a testing site in eastern Kazakhstan, ignoring the fact that there was a large city downwind called Semipalatinsk. There were other cities too. And so they exposed a very large population, ultimately they did over 450 tests, of which maybe 150 were above ground. They had some go wrong later on. The last one that really went badly was in 1989. And turns out Kazakhstan has amazing health data at the essentially the county level. So we know all kinds of outcomes from 2000 onward about how health has been affected there relative to other areas. There are tons of studies on this. What we were able to do were two things. One, the other studies looked at sort of partial effects, and they tended to choose sort of control regions that were highly imperfectly identified. They would sort of be arbitrary about it. We used statistical techniques to match so-called treated areas, ones that were exposed to levels of radiation, and different levels of radiation, with those that were not. And because diagnosis is better in urban areas with hospitals, we had to compare levels of economic development. We don't have those data for Kazakhstan, but again, while we don't have those data, we do have this satellite nightlight series. I keep coming back to that because I've been doing a lot of satellite work. So we have satellite series, and we're able to match, using statistical techniques, be able to match treated and untreated regions. So we end up with highly comparable areas to find out the long-run effects of radiation exposure for a lot of different conditions on populations that couldn't easily move. There's no economics in that, but it's economic techniques. It's the statistical techniques that we use in our discipline applied to an epidemiological problem that is actually hugely tragic, because there are still there's still large numbers of excess illnesses and deaths in that area.
Yeah, no, collaboration clearly drives innovation. And with advancements in technology and data science coming up, it seems like economics is evolving faster than ever before. So, with such fast advancing technology, the world of economics is changing fast. So, how do you envision the future of economics evolving, and what new skills would be essential for students who are entering this field?
Well, clearly, computer and statistics skills are really important. The extreme would be, although I'm not a macroeconomist, even now we can use reports from things like Google searches and online job availability, job search sites, all kinds of online computer information to forecast economic change, not at the yearly level or even the monthly level, but now there are places like the OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, which produces weekly updated forecasts for about 25 major economies. Imagine having weekly forecasts based on rigorous statistical data, not just what people think is going on or occasional job reports. But we don't have to wait for this. This information, if you use Google search data, you can get all this information virtually in real time. So for young people going into economics today is the gap between economics and statistics, computer science is much smaller, and fields are different. Don't get me wrong, but you need the techniques in some of those areas to become effective today, much less in 10 or 20 years from now.
The future certainly looks exciting and exhilarating, but I know many students feel intimidated by STEM subjects, specifically math and science and data science. So what advice would you offer to help them overcome these fears and embrace the critical STEM areas with confidence?
Well, if they're most of us aren't geniuses. Like the best thing about being an economist is most of us are not going to be Nobel laureates in mathematics. Indeed, most of us are not going to be great statisticians or anything like that. What we're doing is synthesizing information. And so if you look around, the hardest part is not learning how to use the techniques and gaining these skills. The hardest part is to identify a problem and then to think of ways that you might get some insight into what's really going on, and then think about ways of testing it. So it's what separates, what makes for success is insight and being creative. It's not, yes, you have to acquire enough mathematics, enough computing skills, enough data science, but you don't have to be a rock star. It's the synthesis that is so important. I can go on and on for hours about different examples of synthesizing data sets and looking at problems here in the United States, overseas, you name it.
Overcoming those fears is certainly crucial, especially as students start to realize how STEM and economics are applied in the real world. So at We STEM the Future, we aim to bridge the gap between theory and practice. So how do you think programs like ours can help young learners see the real-world applications of STEM in fields like economics?
That's an excellent question. I think by simply searching, there's an awful lot of reading that you can do even before you acquire a lot of technical skills. And I think getting people to be excited and engaged. I'm biased because I've taught urban and real estate economics, and I love that because, you walk down the street and you see a building and you think, why is that there? Or how much is that worth? Or how bad is it for that location to have, something across the street that doesn't mesh well? I think reading broadly, but I think for you all, simply providing good links to a wide range of topics that might get people interested, that would be the answer. You don't have to have the STEM techniques themselves are well understood. People know what they need to do, but getting I think for people to gain the confidence, I'm going to tell you, I have a couple stories to tell you. In fact, they both involve women. One woman came to our master's program, and she had been in the Peace Corps overseas, and she had essentially no mathematics, but she wanted to get a degree in economics. And I sent her, I said, go take these courses and come back in a year. And she did. And she got enough, she kept building on it. And sooner or later, we published a paper that I still think is really important. It's on no economics in it, but using the techniques for forecasting infant mortality underreporting, which is really important. They're figuring out ways of accounting for deaths that are not recorded. And she is now a professor of biostatistics at New York University. So I would say that from someone who has no math to making that transition, that's a big deal. Another student came, she had been a classics, Greek and Latin major as an undergraduate, which I do not recommend for going to a STEM discipline. And as she came, and again, she acquired all this mathematics and statistics. Later on, completed her PhD, as the other one did, and is now a economist at the Federal Reserve in Washington. So it doesn't have to be, these are people who came, I would say, were somewhat STEM phobic. And yet they've shown with determination and just a step-by-step approach what they could do. And they were creative. That's what got them their jobs.
It's interesting how the real world experiences can shape someone's perspective. So it's just something I'm curious about. Was there any STEM-related experience during your own educational journey that has had a lasting impact on you and how you approach economics today?
Well, I would say a good but not really good math student. My favorite course as an undergraduate was the hardest course I took, differential equations. And I loved that, but it also convinced me that I was not gifted. It's like there are other people, there was me and 27 physics majors. And they were, they tended not to make the same sort of arithmetic errors and stuff that I made. But just finding patterns, that was the fun part. It wasn't, it's like if you want to let the data speak to you, and you want to believe that there are important topics out there. Once you get to know that, it's, like I talk about the effects of radiation exposure. Well, there's a lot of that in the United States too. And in fact, my wife's family comes from Eastern Washington State, where they built the plutonium plant at Hanford. And a lot of people were exposed, but we in America didn't follow up on that. We made it difficult. And so finding out what happened elsewhere, is informative, not just, it's informative not just for the people of Eastern Kazakhstan, but it's informative for many other exposed populations. The fact that there's so much research that hasn't been done that we can do that can make places better. Everything from that to designing cities. If you're a passion for urban planning, you'll make people, again, it comes back to what I said earlier. When I first started advising that, I quickly learned, don't make things worse. You gotta, and everyone wants to be a hero, but it's so important to gain enough skills so that you don't do damage before you give advice.
It's incredible how those experiences can leave a long-lasting impact on someone. As we discussed earlier today, in today's fast-paced and technology-driven world, why is STEM education more important than ever? And how do you think it empowers students to tackle the challenges of the future beyond economics?
Well, the examples I've given you are largely from, they're from applied epidemiology to, social security forecasting, topics in sociology, the impact on education of expanding electrification in poor areas. There's a lot of health, education, social policy topics, environment, and we just had Hurricane Helene cause massive damage here in Western North Carolina. What's that going to do? What's the long-run effect of that going to do? How's that going to affect everything from, forget about economic topics, family formation, kids going to school? What's that going to do to their outcomes in the coming years? Because their homes have been broken up, their access to technology, their access to just going to school, their lives have been severely disrupted. On the other side, on real estate, what's going to happen to the cost of housing? How's it going to be replaced? What's the most efficient way of providing housing in the areas that have been affected? These are not strictly economic topics, but they're all related, and they use the same they use statistical techniques that we would all be comfortable using. So I don't even see where the barrier is, where one discipline stops and another starts.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt that it's really crucial. But beyond mastering these skills, I think it's also important to make STEM concepts relatable and engaging for students. So how can educators inspire students to see STEM as not just subjects, but as tools that they can use to improve their day-to-day life? And do you have any creative approaches or ideas that you would want to give to an educator?
I'm not sure about creative approaches. Many years ago, I coached teenage baseball for a few years. And I would say the same techniques I use I use in coaching, I use in advising college students and graduate students. It's basically the same thing. It's getting people to believe in themselves. And people come in, there's this was me, this was my friends. We start, when we go to school, self-confidence not very high, it was really, really low. And it takes a long time to believe in yourself. So getting people to believe in themselves sooner rather than later or never. It's like there is a sort of stand by me effect. You want to know that there's someone else, even when you don't believe in yourself. It really helps to know that there is someone else who believes in you, who's standing there beside you. And if that person's older and has a whole lot of experience, so you as a young person you've seen your life, maybe you have some poor idea of how your friends are doing because they're not telling the truth. But you don't have much information, whereas, the blessing of being old, one of the few blessings is that you've seen most things you've seen many times before. And it's like the real joy is knowing people, knowing that they're going to make it before they do, and then just standing beside them while they continue that journey.
Yeah, no, it's true that sometimes the biggest barrier is perception, and there are a lot of misconceptions about STEM education that might bring some young learners back. So what's one common myth that you'd like to debunk to encourage students to jump into these exciting fields like mathematics that I know is a big part in economics?
Well, mathematics is a big part of economics. Mostly, I would say persistence is probably much more important than sheer brilliance. That's what people need to know. People, if I could will one thing, is to believe in yourself, to be patient, and to figure out what it is when you see a problem. Don't oversimplify it, but say, what could I do that would chip away at that problem, make it a little bit better? And how do I come to understand it? It's like you see something, you say, there's a simple answer. Oftentimes there isn't a simple answer. In fact, there rarely is a simple answer. So you have to be patient enough to try to understand as many facets of it as possible. And then think of how could I suggest alternatives? Other thing is, I'm a huge believer, if I were in economic policy, or any social policy, in experimentation. Just think of how could we design ways to we don't really know what's going to be best. How can we design something that will allow, say, different communities, for example, to go and pursue what they think is best, and then measure which actually does work the best. Exact opposite of the way politics is conducted today. We should have competition, and we should have competing visions being implemented and experiment, and we should measure which seems to be working the best.
So you shared a lot of your wisdom today. To wrap it all up, is there any advice that you'd like to share to students who are interested in starting their STEM journeys?
Have fun. Have fun and believe in yourself. Find other people like yourself who enjoy the process as well. Don't think of it as a competition, but think of it as a joint journey.
Okay, so that wraps up for today. Dr. Becker, your insights have been truly inspiring and invaluable. The intersection between STEM and economics not only shapes the future of industry, but also creates boundless opportunities for the next generation of innovators and problem solvers. Your journey embodies the spirit of curiosity, resilience, and interdisciplinary thinking, values that resonate deeply with our mission at We STEM the Future. We are incredibly grateful for your time, wisdom, and passion for education. I'm confident that our listeners will walk away with fresh perspectives on the motivation to explore how STEM and economics can impact their futures. Dr. Becker, it's been an absolute honor to have you on the show, and thank you for your remarkable contributions to inspiring young minds. And to our audience, we hope this conversation leaves you excited to pursue your own STEM journeys. As you continue to learn and explore new possibilities, remember that the future belongs to those who are willing to learn, adapt, and lead with innovation. So Anyways, that's it for today, and stay tuned for more insightful interviews. And until next time, keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
Thank you so much.